Right. So we are underway. Hello again. Happy June to you. I'm excited because this is, I think next week, I may be able to do one more leadership call. And then the week after that, I may be taking a week off. Some of you ask why. Okay, why? Well, my daughter's getting married, so we're having all kinds of people flying in here, all kinds of British people. I'm having to give them beer and wine to keep them at bay, and it will be a wild and celebratory time. So we'll talk more about that. We may squeeze in another call next week, but anyway, much is afoot in the McCroskey household. Hey, last week we talked about lots of questions. And we talked about how to get perspective. And we talked about good thoughts, useful thoughts versus useless thoughts, right? Did everybody have a chance to look at those notes and practice a little or think a little, or some of that stuff useful? Yes. Okay, good. Thank you. Well, remember just a tiny review. Your past does not equal your future. That was a big takeaway for me. Your past does not equal your future. So if you're struggling right now and you're frustrated with where you are, it's okay. It's part of paying the price. And that's something everybody goes through. Remember, whoever can get perspective quickly when they're stuck wins. So if you can snap out of it, if you can change your state, if you can, using NLP or reframing or whatever you want to call it, if you can ask yourself a good question to get a good answer and change your mental state and get unstuck, that is a useful thing. So a great thought I had last week, a question I used to ask myself if I was really feeling down and upset or frustrated, I was asking myself, well, this is really bad. Then I would ask, compared to what? Or compared to whom? And a lot of times that would get me unstuck. Okay? So different ways, all of us have different ways to get unstuck. Today, and last week I alluded to an NLP technique that we might use called the outcome frame. So that's the title of today, getting clarity through the outcome frame. All right, so let me give you an example of a few people that I know. I've changed their names to protect them, but I'll give you examples of people that I've talked with who were stuck. Okay, Diane, we'll call her Diane. Diane has often had the experience of being trapped at her job. So she's got no problem working, but she feels like she's going through the motions. Some of you veterans may feel like that. She sells enough, but she knows she could do better. And she's got kind of bursts of production, but then she settles back into her comfort zone. So she's doing okay, but she's unsatisfied, and she tends to beat herself up because she knows she's not hitting her potential. Some of you feel like Diane, you're kind of stuck in that way. I'm going to give you some questions today to help you reevaluate a new outcome, right? Here's another guy. We'll call him Greg. Greg's love life is a series of messed up relationships. It started off well at the time, but they turned out to be unsatisfying. What he does is he realizes the relationship's over, but he gets stuck and he's unable to get out of it. Have any of you been in a relationship where you're like, I don't feel like I'm in love, I don't like this anymore, but I can't really change. It's not love, it's just a habit. And you might, well, you don't have to raise your hand. That's kind of embarrassing. You're sitting in a group like, yes, I have all kinds of unstable emotional relationships. Don't do that. So it was rhetorical. But he can't get out of this. He can't change. He remains tangled up in relationships, and he just wonders how he got into these in the first place. So he has no clarity. We'll talk about that. Terry, another person. Terry, I know, is an expert on why things don't work for him. He has a job he doesn't really like. He lives in a rundown flat it's kind of a pit. He has a relationship with someone that's sort of disappointing. And he thinks about his situation a lot. And if you ask him, he'll explain why he's kind of stuck where he is. He knows his why. He can tell you why he hasn't been able to do anything during the past few years. But he'll also tell you that knowing his why, like why this is happening to him, hasn't helped him at all. So all those three people as examples are stuck. And it's not like they don't have enough reason to make change. It's just that they don't exactly know how to do it. And their fate is sort of tied up in the intersection of chance and the world, you know, that kind of thing. So they feel like they're at the mercy of their environment and they're not in control. So I would say they are not clear on what they want. All right? So this is all kind of introductory. Don't worry. If you're sitting there going, I want to take notes, don't worry about it yet. I'll tell you when. You can relax. Most of us know what we don't want, right? If you think about it. And a lot of our time and energy goes into figuring out why we don't have, or why we've got what we don't want. Like we are always thinking about why questions, and they're not useful sometimes. It's kind of like we've been dropped off at this crossroads in the middle of a big wasteland or confusion, and we sit down by the road just to think about how we got there. And meanwhile, other people, it seems like, are in cars whizzing by in different various directions. And if we're lucky, maybe someone will decide to stop and give us a lift somewhere. But we're not in control. We're not driving places. All right? So let me explain what the outcome frame is. It's just a fancy term. And you can forget, once you get the idea, you don't need to remember that term, outcome frame. But you're going to go to many physical, professional, experiential places in your lives. And the question is, will those places you go to be places you choose, or will they be places that you just kind of land in because of the flow of circumstances in the environment? Okay? So the importance of knowing where it is you want to go is that you can orient yourself toward that goal, and you can bring energy and all of your abilities into alignment toward that goal. All right. So in NLP, which stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming, this orientation, what we're going to go through is two sets of questions here today, is to find out what people want and then discover what resources they have and how to use those resources to get what they want. That's the outcome frame. Okay? So it's kind of like it orients your thinking in a way so it kind of maximizes the possibility of you getting what you want. And once you have it, you're glad you have it. That's what it's about. So the purpose of these questions is to point you in a direction that's right for you and then get you moving rather than just feeling stuck. In the old days, in the 70s, there was a pop rock band called the Raspberries. Anybody heard of the Raspberries? No. Yoris, have you really heard of the Raspberries? Or were you just, you're like, no, but I've eaten some. Okay, well, they had a group, and the group, they had a song which pertains to what we're talking about when you're stuck. And it was this. It was called, I Don't Know What I Want, But I Want It Now. Some of us feel that way. We have no idea exactly what we want, but I want it now. I want to arrive. I want to be there. So anyway, all we're talking about in the next couple minutes is just perceiving your experience as a set of choices. And rather than looking at your problems in a why orientation, like why is this happening to me and why am I stuck and why, it organizes your experience around what exactly you want and how to get there. So 2 principles to get set up for our questions. Then I'm gonna have you do an exercise or 2 in your own head, okay? 1 principle is this: if it's possible for someone in the world, it's possible for me. So that's something you can write down. If it's possible for someone in the world, it's possible for me. Now, most of you are now thinking of all kinds of examples why that's not true. Like my mind immediately thought of LeBron James. If you know anything about the NBA, he is a monster. They call him King James. He's massive. And so if I want to think, okay, there's no way I can slam dunk a basketball like LeBron James. And that's totally true. There's physical limitations. I mean, the guy's a beast. I don't have his height. I don't have his strength. I don't have his size. I can't jump because I'm a white guy. So there's nothing I can do to change that. But here's the deal. If there's someone in the world who's built like you and has learned to slam dunk a basketball, then it's possible for you to learn that too. That's the point. So you're going, wait a minute, I don't play basketball. So let's put it in LGFG terms. If you're thinking, there's no way I could sell like Mara. You know, I think she hit what? I saw that she hit 40,000 on the phone. Am I right? So they're in the good news deal, or everybody's always going, Chenda, Chenda, yes, Chenda. Well, if you find somebody who's selling the way you would like to, the question is, how does she do that? Or how does he do that? And if it's possible for them, it's possible for you. Okay, the question is to figure out the how. And that's how you can, that's a whole different call. But my first thought is, if it's possible for someone in the company to do this, I know Dimitri is really thinking big, and he's talked in his last newsletter about hoping to see somebody break 200K in a month. And everybody goes, wow, that's great. But somebody's going to do that, you know, very possible. And once it happens, other people go, oh, and they'll figure out how. So here's my second principle from NLP. This is massive. Take this away from this call. This helped me so much when I was learning how to sell. There is no failure, only feedback. Write that down. There is no failure, only feedback. All right? Think with me. Not getting what you want is failure only if there's more to be done. You have to come up completely empty-handed. That's failure. But here's the deal. If you try to accomplish something and you don't do it, then you go, okay, I didn't fail. I just got feedback on, maybe here's some thoughts on how not to conduct a sales meeting, or here's some ideas on how I need to change my tone on the phone. That's just feedback. If you beat yourself up and say, oh, there I go again, I screwed it up, I can't believe, then your brain's thinking failure, failure. What you need to do is think, okay, I got some good feedback. If you get closer to your outcome that you want, your goal, that's giving you feedback that you're on the right track. Okay? So there's no failure, only feedback. If you have a terrible day or a terrible trip in turf, then you should just tell yourself, wow, that trip, what an amazing amount of feedback I got. You know, instead of that sucked. I hate my, you don't need to do that. So let me tell you, we're going to play a little, do an exercise here. And instead of the outcome frame, which we'll do in a minute, I want you to write those questions down. I'm going to ask you some questions, and I want you to think or write down the answers and check how you feel as I'm asking you these questions. This is what we call the blame frame. This is how most people in sales and in life go through life, because they're always having conversations with themselves. They're asking themselves questions, but this is the wrong mentality. So first of all, first step, think of something that's a problem for you in your life right now, okay? And if you got paper, just jot down a couple words. Think of something that's a problem for you in your life right now. You might be overweight. You might not be able to get out of a crappy relationship. You might not be selling what you want to sell. You might, I don't know. You've got problems. Just write one down. Okay? Everybody got one? Okay, everybody's got a problem. Good. If you don't have a problem, that's a real problem, because, I don't know, you're not human. You're an android. All right. So here are the questions I have about your problem, thinking about your problem. Number one, and think about the answer before we move to the next question. What's wrong? Okay? Thought of your problem. What's wrong? Next question. Why do I have this problem? Why do I have this problem? Check how you feel. How long have I had it? How long have I had this problem? Okay? And I know I'm not giving you enough time to think these through, but I want you to get the idea. Next question. How does this problem limit me? How does this limit me? Right? Here's another good one. Most people are really good at these questions. What does this problem stop me from doing that I want to do? What does this problem stop me from doing what I want to do? Okay. Here's another good one to follow up. Whose fault is this that I have this problem? Whose fault is this? Well, I'm overweight because my mom fed me too many Pop-Tarts when I was 3 years old, and I got a sugar addiction and blah, 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 blah. Okay, fine. Does that help you knowing that? No. Last question. When was the worst time I experienced this problem? When was the worst time I experienced this? So after having heard those questions, take a minute, just a second, and breathe and kind of remember what it was like in your head answering them. Okay? This is the way most people frame their problem situations. How many of you felt like it was kind of negative? Like, ugh, this isn't a good feeling. How many of you noticed your brain didn't give you lots of positive options? Right? You're just like, woe is me. So if you get in the blame frame and use those questions, maybe it's completely subconsciously, they're problem oriented and they lead to lack of choice. That's a problem. And they demand explanations of why you don't have what you want, and they give you excuses. I mean, remember, if you ask your brain a bad question, it's going to give you a bad answer. Garbage in, garbage out. Ask a bad question, get a bad answer. So we're going to have to change. So kind of erase, if you wrote down a bunch of stuff, kind of clear that out of your head, slap yourself in the face a few times. Let's go. Good job. Very coachable, a few of you. We're going to go to the outcome frame now. Let's try a different approach and feel the contrast when I ask these questions. These are ones I want you to actually write down and use, okay? So if you're like, well, when can I really take some good notes? Now! Do it now. Okay, first question. And this is what I would say. If we were sitting in a coffee shop and you felt stuck, these are the questions I would ask you. They would come out of my mouth. Number one, I would say, what do I want? So that's the question for you. What do I want? Exactly, like specifically, what do I want? Next question. When do I want it? When do I want it? Have you ever noticed people that kind of have vague dreams about stuff? They start the sentence with, someday I would like to blank. Someday I'd love to weigh less. Someday I'd like to have a loving relationship. Someday I'd like to hit 50K. But that's like, when do I want this? Be very specific. Your brain will move toward it. Next question. This is so important. Put a star by this. How will I know that I have it? How will I know that I have it? Woo, that's massive. We'll come back to that one. Next question. When I get what I want, what else in my life will improve? When I get there, what else in my life will improve? Next question. Sorry, I have to make you write fast. Or you're having to memorize quickly if you don't have paper. Next question. What resources do I have to help me with this? What resources do I have? And the last question. This is good too. What am I going to begin doing now to get what I want? What am I going to begin doing now to get what I want? Not someday, not next week. What's a little action step I can do now? All right. So now that I've kind of walked you through those questions, some of you even started coming up with answers. Take a moment and remember what answering those mentally was like. All right. How many of you felt an emotional difference between answering the blame frame questions and the outcome frames? Did you feel a difference? A little bit? Yeah? Some of you are nodding because you know what? Your brain was going to a zone of solutions, not a zone of excuses, right? Most people end up feeling pretty terrible by the time they get through the blame frame because it's always pushing you towards what's wrong, and that's not very empowering. All right? So there are two questions I want you to ponder on, then we'll wrap up. The significant questions in that list, they're all good, but there's two you really got to ask yourself. And these are the two I focused on in personal conferences. I always ask, what do you want to happen? Because sometimes I would, just like I said last week, I would get people in this sort of weird emotional loop. I'm not confident enough to sell, and I can't sell because I'm not confident enough. And I would say, okay, stop, time out. What do you want to happen? And they would say, boom, and they would give me an answer. And I would say, great. Let's talk about what do I want. Asking questions about what you want leads you to build a real specific representation in your brain about what you're going towards. Okay? You need, the more specific it is, the better. All right? If it's, you know what makes the LGFG work to a great degree is because Dimitri has a very clear picture outcome in his mind about what kind of company he wants. Would you agree? It's in terms of size, in terms of culture, in terms of growth, in terms of the type of people that are involved, right? Because that's a clear picture, all the extra stuff gets pushed aside and washed away because he has an outcome that he's moving the company towards. So that's the most important question. You know, if I were with Dimitri, I'd say, what do you want? And he could talk for 35 minutes about what he wants in terms of the company. Yeah? All right. Here's the second good question. And this is the last one I'll focus on until we wrap up. How will I know when I have it? How will I know when I have it? This question gets you to specify what you're going to see, what you're going to hear, maybe what you're going to feel, and just in and around you that will let you know that you've reached the outcome that you're hoping for. Okay? Like I've talked to people and I've asked them, well, what do you want to happen? And they're super vague. They're like, oh, I just want to be happy. All right. Then I'll say, okay, in a sense, the question is, how will you know when you're happy? And they go, I don't know. And I say, no, I don't accept that answer. You know. How will you know when you've arrived? And they'll say, well, and they'll start thinking. And the more they think and talk, the clearer it gets in their mind. And the more clear it is in your mind, the more distinctions there are, the better. So let me give you an example for the LGFG world. Suppose one of your goals to improve, one of your outcomes is you want to be more confident in dealing with A players, like A-level managers, the super confident, wealthy folks. They don't, because right now they intimidate you because you kind of feel like a newbie. All right. So my question is, how will you know when you have it? How will you know when you're more confident? And so you start to think, okay, maybe it's the way that you're picturing yourself before the sales meeting. You know, maybe instead of sitting outside the office, kind of scrunched over with your cell phone in a real small, tiny position, you're kind of spread out. I wish I could show you. Remember our video on getting big? If you haven't, go to that video on the TED Talk on how your body language shapes who you are. And they said, get big. Whole different talk. Maybe we can review that sometime. But you see yourself before the sales meeting, you're confident, you're being big. When you meet your client, you're looking him in the eye, right? You've got a great handshake. Your tempo and delivery is really even. You're speaking in a confident and sure voice, right? So that's what you hear. That's what you see. You feel good because you're taking charge of the interaction. So those might be specific little mental pictures or triggers that will say, okay, I have more confidence, and that's what you need to focus on. That's the outcome you're trying. That's how you know when you've arrived. So what do I want to happen? How will I know when I have it? Those are great specific questions to ask yourself. Okay, good, helpful? Yes? Let me close with two more thoughts, maybe three. Here's one to write down. You get what you focus on, so focus on what you want. We always get what we focus on, so focus on what you want. A lot of people don't do that. You know, the Bible says in Proverbs, it says, as a person thinks in his heart, so he is. What you guys believe about yourselves will come to pass. So as you think about yourself in your heart, what you picture clearly will occur. So that is a good thought. And I looked this up. This is another thought about clarity, and I'll close with this and let you guys talk if you have a comment. It was about clear thinking and clarity. It says this: clarity is power. The more clear you are about exactly what it is you want, the more your brain knows how to get there. Clarity is power. The more clear you are about exactly what it is you want, the more your brain knows how to get there. And I don't know who said that. Maybe it was me. That's really good. Yeah, that was from me. So write that down. Lee McCroskey came up with that quote. I Googled it, and evidently it was myself. So today, what did we do? And if you have thoughts, unmute yourself and talk. We talked about bad questions you can ask yourself using the blame frame. What's wrong? Why is this happening to me? And then an outcome frame, a goal-oriented frame, some questions to get you thinking towards solutions. So anybody have an example of how this worked for them, or how it didn't, or a bad example, or a story that feel free to chip in? Anyone? Okay. Good. Fine. Well, I'll take that as another successful call. So I wish you well this week as you're thinking through goals, and if you're getting unstuck, remember one of my favorite websites is unstuck.com. So look through that. That could be helpful. And then think through some of these outcome frame questions to help you reorient. All right? That's all from this end. Thank you. We're on schedule. Have a great day or evening or morning, or just go win. See you later. Bye-bye.